The coronavirus pandemic has gotten so critical in Los Angeles that the county's hospitals are asking ambulance workers not to bring in patients who show little chance of survival, according to a DHS directive obtained by NBC News. That directive is not limited to patients who have COVID and include adult patients who show no signs of breathing, movement, pulse, or blood pressure. Can you believe this is happening in the United States of America? In addition, crews are being advised to cut back on their use of oxygen and only administer it to patients who have oxygen saturation levels below 90%. Paramedics and EMT workers are continuing to try and resuscitate patients in the field until a pulse can be restored, after which a patient could be stabilized and transported to a hospital. Officials say they need to focus on patients with a greater chance of surviving.
President Biden met with wounded troops during a visit to Walter Reed National Military Medical Center on Friday. The meet and greet with the president included both active and retired military personnel who are being treated at the hospital. He also toured a vaccine distribution center located in the facility, and the president has a personal history with Walter Reed. His late son, Beau Biden, died there in 2015 after a 2-year fight with brain cancer. The visit was one of the few departures President Biden has made from the White House campus since being sworn in as president.
House Speaker Nancy Pelosi notified Democrats in the House yesterday that it will be pursuing its own commission to look into the January 6th attack on the Capitol, something Republicans will not admit was an insurrection. In a letter to House colleagues, Pelosi signaled that if the Senate fails to establish a bipartisan January 6th commission, then the House will pursue its own investigations. Meanwhile, Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer informed members of his caucus that he will force the Senate to vote on a bill to establish a bipartisan January 6th commission again in the future.
The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, meanwhile, said yesterday that schools can safely reopen, even if teachers haven't yet received the COVID vaccine. CDC Director Dr. Rochelle Walensky cited data that shows social distancing and wearing masks significantly reduces the spread of the virus in a school setting. However, White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki later walked back those comments, saying they were not official CDC guidance. The statement comes as the White House COVID-19 coordinator, Jeff Zients, calls on Congress to pass additional funding to ensure schools have the resources necessary to support reopening. President Biden has pledged to safely reopen all kindergarten through 8th grade schools in the first 100 days of his administration. The CDC has prioritized teachers as essential workers under their vaccination plans, but many teachers have not yet received their doses as the nation currently faces a shortage of the vaccine. Former Democratic Michigan Governor Jennifer Granholm has been confirmed as the new energy secretary by the Senate yesterday. The vote was 64 to 35. Granholm is expected to play a key role in Biden's agenda to develop a green economy that will help the United States fight climate change. Over the years, the newly confirmed secretary has advocated for clean energy technology and promoted electric vehicle and battery manufacturing in the U.S. to help preserve jobs that will be lost as the country transitions from fossil fuels to renewable energy. President Biden also laid out his goal for reopening schools. He said yesterday he's directing every state to designate in-person learning as an essential service. That designation will help the administration meet the goal of vaccinating every school teacher and faculty staff member across the country with at least one dose by the end of March.
We want every educator, school staff member, child care worker to receive at least one shot by the end of the month of March. Starting next week and for the month of March, we'll be using our federal pharmacy program to prioritize the vaccination of pre-K through 12 educators and staff and child care workers. Throughout March, they will be able to sign up for an appointment at a pharmacy near them.
Chicago Public Schools and city officials withdrew threats to lock out teachers who refused to work in person yesterday. Educators will be allowed to continue to teach students remotely for the next 2 days in what officials are calling a cooling off period. The stalemate comes as the Chicago Teachers Union and city officials failed to reach an agreement on conditions for reopening schools for in-person learning. Negotiations between the two sides are expected to continue today. Schools in the nation's third largest school district had been slated to reopen yesterday for more than 60,000 kindergarten through 8th grade students.
You know, Willie, back when COVID first hit back in the spring, we didn't know anything about it. Obviously, you know, how schools could interact. There have been some schools that have done this very effectively. There have been others that haven't. But certainly, we are all aware, and I'm sure you're aware, of schools that have used best practices to get a lot of students back into classes. And with vaccines rolling out there, and let's hope that teachers get to the front of the line for vaccines, but with vaccines rolling out there, there ought to be some way, not just for Chicago schools, but schools all across this country to teach some students in class.
Yeah, what a disgrace that back and forth in Chicago is to all the kids who need adults to step up for them right now. I mean, the CDC, this is not your opinion or my opinion, the CDC came out last week with research that shows schools are safe to be open as long as there's masking and distancing. If you take best practices, schools, it turns out, are some of the safest places in this country. It's true in New York City. It's true all across the country. I think, as you said, a lot of people, including educators, including mayors, have been surprised at just how low the infection rates have been among children inside schools. So people should do everything in their power to get their schools open safely. Safely is the key word for kids and for the teachers.
Meanwhile, Democratic House leaders have announced their support for Shalonda Young to lead the Office of Management and Budget as director. Young is currently Biden's nominee for OMB deputy director, and the growing support comes a day after the president withdrew his nomination for Neera Tanden at her request. Republican senators have also showed support for Young. In a Senate Budget Committee hearing Tuesday, Senator Lindsey Graham told Young that she'd get his support for the job, be it deputy director or director. Senator John Kennedy also said, quote, "You may be more than deputy." Young has previously served as a former top Democratic aide on the House Appropriations Committee. A pretty unusual campaign for members of Congress for a nominee.
Federal agents have seized hundreds of thousands of counterfeit 3M branded N95 masks yesterday in an East Coast warehouse. Authorities have seized almost 10 million masks in recent weeks as part of an ongoing investigation into the sale of the fake surgical masks to hospitals and other medical facilities in 5 states. Officials notified roughly 6,000 potential victims in 12 states who may have unknowingly purchased the knockoff masks. The phony personal protective equipment are not tested to see if they meet the strict N95 requirements, putting frontline medical professionals at risk of contracting COVID. Since the beginning of the pandemic, federal law enforcement agencies have seized $33 million in counterfeit products and have arrested more than 200 people.
Welcome back. Joining us now with a look at Axios AM, the co-founder of Axios, Mike Allen. Mike, always great to see you. You recently spoke with the Reverend Franklin Graham, who's the son of the iconic evangelical preacher, about trying to convince his followers to the vaccine. Let's watch a little bit of that.
Nothing's more important to you than saving souls.
Yeah. I want people to know that God loves them. He will forgive you, and God will accept you into His presence. I want people to know that COVID-19 can kill you, but we have a vaccine out there that could possibly save your life. And if you wait, it can be too late. Very interesting conversation, Mike. What more did you learn there? And how has the evangelical community approached the vaccine to the point that the Reverend Graham feels it's necessary to make this plea?
Yeah, thank you, Casey. And so at the very end there, if you wait, it can be too late. So it's the grammar, the cadence of an altar call. So Franklin Graham has a big problem. Casey, you know the polling. 45% of evangelicals say they would not get the virus. 30% of all Americans say that. So there's this massive gap. And you have leaders like Franklin Graham, one of the most famous evangelical leaders in the world, saying, I got the shot, so should you. But the preachers just don't have the hold on their flock that they used to. So I traveled down to North Wilkesboro, North Carolina. That's Reverend Graham's headquarters of Samaritan's Purse, which has been deploying COVID resources around the world. They're the ones that put up those white tents that we all remember from Central Park, from those dark days of the early part of COVID. And Franklin Graham is saying, this is another way to save your life.
It's very, very important message for all of us. Mike, let's talk a little bit about politics now, because I know you guys have been doing some reporting, as have we, on Liz Cheney and what exactly it is she plans to do to try and execute on that very clearly stated mission of trying to make sure that Donald Trump does not become president of the United States again. What are you guys learning about how her plans are going to unfold?
Well, Casey, Liz Cheney is going national. She's determined to make the purge the start of a movement, not the end of something. So, Casey, ramping up in lots of ways. We're going to see her giving speeches. We're going to see her traveling the country. We're going to see her raising money. We're going to see her playing in elections. And it's all in the service of this larger message, like from even before the vote, Casey, as you know, her camp has been very intentional about making this bigger than a leadership fight, making this about the truth, making this about the future of the Democratic Party, making Liz Cheney the leader of the bid to counter Trump, to Trump.
Right, the future of the Republican Party, indeed. And Mike, this also comes as, there was a freshman congressman who basically said, hey, there were tourists in the Capitol on January 6th. Obviously, those of us that were there know that's simply not the case. How does current leadership grapple with this? They've got Liz Cheney on the one hand saying the obvious, saying the truth, and then they've got some of these backbench House members who are saying it didn't even happen.
Yeah, so a lot of Republicans were telling me, and I know telling you, Casey, if we can get past this leadership fight, if we can get past the Cheney problem, this is going to be, for the National Party, a black eye, a PR disaster. But if we can get past it, we can talk about Joe Biden. We can talk about what we want to be talking about Democrats. But Casey, You're pointing out, like, they're nowhere near that. There's recidivism on 1/6, just as Kevin McCarthy, the House Republican leader, is out trying to deny that something happened, then others are saying that it didn't even happen at all. And so no progress in turning that page to where other Republicans want it to be, which is a message about Democrats and about President Biden.
Right. All right, Mike Allen, thank you very much.
There's another big story we're covering this morning for the business, tech, and media worlds. Jeff Bezos announced yesterday he will be stepping down from his role as chief executive officer at Amazon, the company he founded 27 years ago. Bezos will transition to the role of executive chair in the third quarter of this year. Andy Jassy, who currently serves as the chief executive of Amazon Web Services, will take over as CEO. He is a longtime Amazon employee dating back to 1997 and is responsible for building the company's cloud service business that now accounts for 60% of its operating profits. In a memo to employees, Bezos said the transition would allow him to focus on other ventures that he's passionate about, including the Bezos Earth Fund and the Washington Post. Let's bring in senior media reporter for NBC News and MSNBC, Dylan Byers. So, Dylan, tell us, what this is going to mean on many levels and how this came about.
Yeah, sure. Look, in one respect, it doesn't mean a whole lot, at least for Amazon. Jeff Bezos has positioned this company for incredible strength for a very long time. This company has never been stronger. He started it almost 3 decades ago as a bookstore at a time, online bookstore at a time when many people were dubious about what the internet was. Now it is a $1.7 trillion company. And, raise your hand on this panel or for anyone watching if you don't have an Amazon Prime account. More than 4 out of every 5 Americans now has an Amazon Prime account. That is an incredible relationship that this company has with the consumer. It's positioned for strength right now. And if you're Jeff Bezos, you're coming out of a pandemic that has only accelerated the growth of your company, made you, the necessary aspect of everybody's lives. And you're doing this ahead of a time when Washington is getting ready to crack down more on big tech. You have other pursuits. You have other things you want to pursue. You want to go to space. You want to expand your media empire. You want to get more involved in philanthropy. I don't think by making this move that Jeff Bezos is separating himself from Amazon. I don't think we're going to see less of Jeff Bezos. If anything, I think we're going to see more of him. But it's a very convenient time for him to look back at everything he's achieved and to step back from the day-to-day operations of this wildly successful company and expand his horizons.
Willie, it doesn't seem so long ago, but that's obviously because I'm old. It doesn't seem like that long ago I was reading articles, people wondering whether Amazon, a brilliant concept, would actually ever start making money, that he was throwing everything that he made back into the company. And, we all, I certainly have, talked about how Steve Jobs changed our lives more than anybody else. It's hard to say that anybody changed the way we live more than Jeff Bezos. And now, of course, people concerned about monopolies, all the things that happen when you're this wildly successful. But it's been an extraordinary arc of his career.
It's an incredible build, as Dylan kind of just laid out. It was an online bookstore. Think about what it is now today. If you can think of anything that you need, where do you go first? You go to Amazon. It can be a book, it can be food, it can be a bicycle, it can be whatever you want it to be, and it's delivered to your door. We take so many of these things for granted now, but in terms of how easy it is, in terms of the logistics he laid out, much in the way that Fred Smith did at FedEx, revolutionizing logistics, getting things to our door, anything to our door. It's an amazing story. And Dylan, I guess the interesting next question, given how smart and how visionary Jeff Bezos has been, is what next for him? I know he likes to focus on this space company that's sort of an outgrowth of Amazon. What do you see on the horizon? Because he's not a very old guy.
No, he's not. And again, I do think he's going to stay involved, and I do think we will see more of him. I think definitely there's philanthropy. I think that he could continue to expand the media empire. I think this obsession with space is very real for him. I think he and Elon Musk are not just in a race for, wealthiest man in the world. They're in a race really to own space, to own the next frontier. And I think that's somewhere we're going to see him spending a lot of time. And then I would also just say, stepping into the executive chairman role is not necessarily meaning that you are not going to be involved in the really landmark decisions that Amazon has to make. You think about Larry Ellison at Oracle, Bill Gates at Microsoft, even Bob Iger at Disney. There's the opportunity to continue to think about the direction of the company and run the company. You're just not running it day to day so much as you're running it decade to decade. And I would say that, so many people have a Amazon Prime account. Willie, you mentioned the ability to get anything in 2 hours. Just watching the opening of your show, it seems like Tommy Tuberville might benefit from an Amazon Prime account, so he can get things to him a little quicker.
True. We could help him. We'll let him know. NBC's Dylan Byers, thank you very much.